Hey, Composer Gloves here. This is the 10th video in the FM8 from the ground up tutorial series, and today we're going to be talking about the envelope in your operators. So you have 6 operators that are all basically the clones, and you just have 6 of them, and they all have this envelope here. Well, this envelope is how you control the amplitude of your operator, how fast it turns on and off. It basically controls this volume knob. Now this volume knob sets like the master level. So if you have 81 as your master level, this top will be 81. If you have it as 33, it can only go up to 33. So that's what that does. So let's get right to it. You have presets. If you haven't watched the effects part 1, I talked about how the templates work and how to save. Well, it's the exact same thing with the operators. So if you want to know how to make and save your own templates, you can go check that video out. You have a whole bunch of different options here. And what they've done with this is really pretty cool. So let's talk about that. We have these points that you can drag and move around. And if you're familiar with an ADSR envelope, you will be familiar with this. You can drag this point out to change the attack length. You could drag it down to change how loud the attack is when it reaches the peak of your attack. Then you have your decay, which can ironically go up. And you reach a sustain period, which would be this. And then usually, in an ADSR, you have a down envelope, which would be called your release. But in this envelope is unique in that you can click and add points places. And you have these 2 red lines that move around on your grid. And you might be saying, what are these lines? They are your loop points. So if you're familiar with Massive, this is sort of like the Performer tab mixed with your envelope tab all in one. So let's talk about these breakpoints. So you can add breakpoints by right-clicking, and you can get rid of them by right-clicking again. Click and drag, and to maneuver around your envelope, you can double-click to bring your envelope to the exact length of your view. You can click and drag down to zoom out, and click and drag up to zoom in. And you click and drag left or right to move down your line here. Okay. You have this option called key scaling. So let's make a really fast pluck envelope. And what key scaling does is the higher the note is, the shorter or the faster this envelope happens. The lower the note is, the longer the envelope happens. Now you might be saying, why would you want to do that? Well, this is for if you're trying to emulate like a piano. Piano notes, the higher end goes out much faster than the lower end. So that's what they are emulating with this key scaling. So that's what that is. Velocity scans the exact same way, except for it's with velocity. So if you hit notes harder on your keyboard in a higher range, they'll respond differently than if you were to hit lower notes. I don't have a keyboard with velocity sensitivity hooked up, so we're just going to leave that. You go down in the negative and it behaves the exact opposite as if you were to go into the positive value. You have sustain, so we need to talk about these loop points and these endpoints as well. So these endpoints move next to each other, as you could tell. Well, why would you want that? Well, when you end an envelope, it will start. Basically what they set it up here is this, where you start your envelope, and then where you end your envelope will start where you left off. And there's no way to not do this. So just so you know. So if you don't want that release click like you're hearing right now, you're going to have to bring it all the way down. So if you want to start at a loud volume, you're just going to have to deal with the click at the end. I'm sorry, I do not know how else to deal with that. But anyways, that is what those do. Now, you have these red lines here. This represents your looping area. So if we were to zoom out, you could actually add a bunch of points in here and tell the volume, turn on, turn off, then turn on again, and do that. Why not? And as you see, it's looping right here through this little setup we have. But if we turn sustain off, it'll just go through and then end. It's essentially a one shot. It'll play through your whole envelope once, and that's the end. And there you go. If you have this up, it just drops the value off right there. So that's important to know. Sustain will maintain this middle area here between the two red lines. And you also have this release. When release is on, it'll go to your release and end. If you have it off, it will loop through this middle part basically infinitely. So it's important to know what that is. If you hit this tempo sync, I hope you understood that. So what I'm saying is right now it's off. So it's basically holding that value forever. But if you hit release, it will, when you let go of the note release, it'll trigger the release part of the envelope. All right, and you have this tempo sync option, which puts a grid on, it superimposes a grid. It's the word they use in the manual. That puts a grid over your time. Right now, this is time in seconds. There's 1 second. But if you put tempo sync, it goes to your host DAW and it will show you the values. There's where the 4/4, this is where the 4th beat of the first measure is. And it keeps going. This is where the 4th beat of the second measure is. You kind of have to do math to figure this out. 2/8. Anyways, so that's what that does. And you'll notice that our values, if we did not have tempo sync on, do not move around or change. But if we turn tempo sync on, we can snap it to the nearest breaking point. So it's very easy to be exact with this. And you could create things like this if we wanted, to have some sort of a pulsing thing going on here. We could set that up. So it's much like the Performer tab in Massive, only you have a lot more control over your shape of the angle between the values. And you can also set up looping envelopes and things. So that's really useful for your song. This little icon right here, don't worry about it too much yet. It has to do with the envelope tab as a whole. And we're not going to talk about that, but you can see F is represented right here in this tab. And this value just shows you the value your envelope was left at. So if we have our envelope left at, yeah, it just shows you the value that's going through your envelope. You have this breakpoint number, which is and it is just there for observation. You can use it to select your breakpoint. So you go down to the breakpoint 3 or breakpoint 4 or whatever, and you cannot change the bottom value unless you add a breakpoint. Then it goes up. You get rid of it, goes down. Pretty simple. You have mode. This is SLD is slide, and so when you move a breakpoint, it slides the other points around, which may not be what you want. So you could change it to fix, and now it just moves that breakpoint in the area that you desire. So that could be extraordinarily useful, important to know about. And you also have these 2 time options down here. I believe this stands for absolute time. I don't entirely know, but I know what it does. It shows you the time from the start of your envelope to the current breakpoint that you're editing. And these are mostly just for observational. If you're trying to do something real specific, these could be important. Other than that, they're not like super mega important. And you also have this relative time, something along those lines. It shows you the time between the breakpoint you're editing and the previous breakpoint. So if you get really close to it, the time goes down to basically nothing, which should be at 0. And if you go far away, it goes as far away as it possibly can, and the value increases. So that's what the 2 time things do. The level shows you the amplitude amount at that particular moment in time on the breakpoint that you are currently editing. And you can actually change these values by selecting your breakpoint number, and you can alter them according to what I just said. I believe you can't change absolute time, and you can alter the level. I may be wrong. ABS may stand for something else. Those are names I gave it because that's what they do to me, from what I understand. You also have slope, and if you remember in the good old math days when you were graphing lines according to the point slope formula or whatever, this essentially changes that, so you can have it be more logarithmic, or you can have it bulge out like that, or you can just make it straight linear just by dragging like so. I prefer to drag my points, but every now and then I suppose I could come down here. You can also type in a value if you desire. And that is what the envelope does. So now you can set up envelopes for your modulations, which could be really helpful if you're modulating something and you want it to come in over time, or you want it to do things. And especially now that you know about looping, you can create some really intricate sequences using your arpeggiator mixed with your expert and do some neat things. Just get creative. And again, you have all these presets. You can make your own. And if you enjoy these videos, subscribe. Check out my music at composegloves.com and have a blessed day.